Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we are here to discuss some of the controversies that have visited the cellular industry, the mobile services industry in recent weeks, and we have with us to discuss that Mr. Rajan Mathews, who's Director General of the Cellular Operators Association of India. Now, just to explain to you briefly, the Cellular Operators Association of India essentially is an association which looks after the mobile industry's interests and also looks after the growth of the cellular industry in general, and it represents the interests of the cellular industry before the government, DOT, the telecom regulator, etc. It's a very well-known body, and so we have with us Rajan Mathews today. Welcome to our show, Rajan. So the reason we've invited you today is to really understand how the telecom regulator, who in the last 7-8 months issued a large number of discussion papers, policy discussion papers, over 25 of them, and these discussion papers have resulted in some apprehension among the existing cellular mobile operators that the outcome that may come out of these discussion papers may not be in the interest of the existing players in the industry, and maybe biased in favor of new entrants. Now, why do you say that?
So, Venu, first of all, I think what we are asking for is a level playing field. We're saying don't tilt this way, that way. Yeah. And so what we saw in the last several weeks of papers, where certain papers which seem to have an inherent tilt towards new entrants, and that could be Reliance Jio, MVNOs, even BSNL, that was being given certain privileges that we felt were not appropriate. So when we look at some of the papers like discriminatory pricing, then all of a sudden trying to introduce free data, but excluding the operators from any offering of free data, then obviously the whole issue with call drops, and then most recently, 2 papers on the same day, both of which we thought just heightened our concern. One was the quality of service norms, which we felt was a backdoor again after having lost the Supreme Court ruling, coming back to say, okay, well, how do we enhance penalties? What do we need to look at? Do we need to tighten QoS? We have international norms that we follow. Maybe we should change that. And then the interconnect paper, which again was not expected for another year and a half or so. And all of a sudden it's been brought to the front. And again, that really raised our issue. One of the observations that was made by the Honorable Supreme Court when it reviewed the call drop discussion paper was that the regulator hadn't properly addressed the concerns and the issues presented. So
the Supreme Court also said that, right?
Exactly. So the jump was, okay, you had a point of view and you had all of this data and information which seemed to mitigate against a particular point of view, but yet you took the decision.
Yeah.
So here again, here's our concern that you've got a paper, it seems to be tilted in a certain direction vis-a-vis bill and keep, and we were concerned, oh my gosh, this is another prejudged type of an issue like perhaps drop calls. That was our concern.
Okay. So, Rajan, let me simplify this for our audience. Essentially what you're saying is there are existing cellular mobile operators who have invested lakhs of crores of rupees, right, in this industry, and they are following a certain set of norms which the TRAI appears to want to change, and this change would, the apprehension is, would affect the revenues of existing players, and it may sort of tilt the weightage in favor of the new players, Reliance Jio being the elephant in the room. So now, how does the regulator deal with this now? worldwide it's been seen that when technology changes occur, or when you transit from one technology to another, which is inevitable, it's happened in the world over the last 30-40 years. It's still happening. The regulator plays a very critical role, right? And the regulator is responsible for making an orderly shift to new regimes. Now, are you suggesting that that orderly shift doesn't seem to be happening, and there are a lot of jerks? Is that what you're saying?
So, in the orderly transition, Venu, you can't pick winners and losers, right? Sure, okay. You need to leave that to the dynamics of the marketplace. And so, this notion that the new incumbents have technology that is somehow superior, and that the incumbents or the new guys have superior technology, incumbents have legacy stuff, is, I think, a bit of a red herring, because all of our networks have been IP-fied. All right, we use the latest technology. We are the ones who moved without any great prompting from the government.
So you're saying there's not much difference in technology capabilities?
Absolutely not. The notion, more 4G markets have been opened by members who are part of it. We've introduced going the transition from 3G to 4G, perhaps now 5G and onwards, right? So the technology innovations have certainly been part and parcel of the incumbents investing, as you say, lakhs and lakhs and lakhs and crores of rupees in this. So I think the issue of technology is not the issue. The critical issue, Venu, is in our point of view, what is regulated? What does the sovereign control by way of license so that it can give you an exclusivity vis-a-vis a license? And that is voice. If you look at the 1885 Act, it says that the voice telephony business is the exclusive domain of the government. The government has given that. So therefore, however you package the delivery of voice, be it WhatsApp, be it VoIP, be it Volt, with data, whatever, that particular element is subject to license and regulation. So that is the whole issue. So when you get to this discussion, and somebody, for example, the OTT folks saying is that, oh, well, we're delivering it on a data connection. Well, fine, but it's voice. And so this is what we're raising, saying same service, same rules. So, for example, if you want us to provide legal enforcement, de-encryption, access to these services and give it to the government to review and pay 15% for every rupee we earn, we're saying is that, make sure that that voice component is also similarly treated.
And what about this oft-repeated argument that when you have internet IP telephony technology, then this whole notion of termination charges or minute-based calculation of rates, it disappears because it's basically packets that operate. So whether it's voice or data. So how do you respond to that argument?
So, all of our networks are digitized. So this whole notion of data goes back to, is it digitized or not, right? Yeah, okay. If it is not digitized, nothing works, right? So all of our networks, right from the radio access part of the network to the core of our network to the back-end transmission, is all digitized. Okay. So you can't say that we are not. So this is where the 3Gs and 4Gs and 5Gs, it's how efficiently can we use it. So the fact that you're saying that a particular delivery of voice services can be packaged through an application, I think we offer that. VoIP has been there for donkey's years, right? Again, if you look at Skype was there, all right? It's not as if, they ate our lunch. I mean, they did take some, but again, it came under the regulatory regime which says, look, if you want to call a mobile number, well, then there is an interconnect charge, because that is under regulation. You just want to call a data to data, go at it. All right, there's no interconnection. It's almost a freebie going back and forth. So this is the whole contention. What is it that you're regulation? What is it that you're licensing? And how are you treating this licensed activity, which is voice? The method of delivery should be agnostic.
Should be agnostic. So you're essentially saying that this talk of technology is a red herring, the technology differentiation, or is it something similar to the controversy that had occurred 15 years ago when there was a GSM versus CDMA? Then everybody came to GSM eventually. There were CDMA operators trying to say that no, this is superior. Would you draw a comparison with that?
A bit of it, Venu, because again, what we complained about was a non-level playing field. You're
Even
saying,
at that time,
even at that time when, 2000, 2001, 2002, this whole issue came up, there were new entrants, all right? New entrants coming in and saying, oh, well, we are offering CDMA, we have wireless in the local loop, and we can make this technology kind of do things that the cellular operators are doing. And so we're saying is that, God bless you, bring in the technology, but don't come in and say, look, if I'm being taxed, don't introduce a similar activity on which I'm taxed and say it's not taxed.
Okay.
And you'll notice that the resolution of that whole controversy was to say to the new incumbents, guys, got to pay the same money, got to pay the entry fee, got to take the ticket to the dance, and then come in and play so that there's a level playing field in existence. So I think it's a similar argument.
So basically, you're essentially saying that that there should be level playing field in terms of what you pay for licenses and the way you earn your revenues, the way you're taxed, the way various charges are leveled on you, whether it's for rural telephony or collection for USO, etc. So on all these counts, you're saying there should be level playing field, right?
Absolutely. And if you look, one of the things that we are saying is that our member operators have been in play for upwards of 20 years now, right? And who's rolled it out to the rural areas and who's making the investments? We took the risk, right? You can come today and say, look, hey, India is a very different place than it was 15 years ago when the risks were real, right? So we're saying is that, look, we've played, and we go back to the tri-construct. There's always a model that you use to determine costs. So this is the whole sort of debate on interconnect or anything. There are costs. However you want to calculate the cost, 80 to 90% of the costs, are almost similar. They pay spectrum, we pay spectrum. They pay for diesel, we pay for diesel. They use stars, we use stars. They hire people, we hire people. So most of the costs, so you can't say that, oh, just because I've got a new technology. New technology is a very small component of the overall cost.
Another argument, Rajan, which was made then was that the price to the consumer was being brought down drastically. Now, it's a counterfactual whether if at that time Reliance hadn't entered the market, what the permanent cost would have fallen to, but their entry did bring down costs. Now, can that argument be made today? Can the new entrant, say Reliance Jio, make an argument that their entry and more competition, etc., and some of the changes that TRI is proposing will bring down ultimately costs to the consumer and offer much cheaper services, voice, data, all bundled? Is that an argument which needs to be sort of at least heard?
So, Venu, prima facie, right, it looks like, oh yeah, that's it. But when you sort of peel the onion skin back, what you realize is that it was not a sustainable reduction. All right. Yes, CDMA came in. There was the big monsoon hangama. All right. People took these phones and then 6 months later threw it away when the freebies were over.
Yeah.
All right. And so when you ask what really drove the reduction, prices down, you really say, look, a historic decision that was made by the then Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, to go to a revenue share. All right. We were paying these big amounts of money up front and we were saying this is killing us. He said, fine. That was one. Secondly is innovation, where we started introducing prepaid. Nowhere in the world was prepaid a big thing. We couldn't collect money. So this was the next thing. Because we brought the cost down of actually billing and getting to people and delivering that bill, when we introduced prepaid, that was it. And then the next big thing was calling party pays, right? Calling party pays, in a sense, halved the bill, right?
Exactly.
So if you want to look at real drivers of what reduced the consumer's bill, it wasn't Reliance coming in, although there was a smart blip. It's like, Docomo coming in.
But the fact is, eventually India had one of the lowest rates for consumers, right?
Yeah, and I think...
And not necessarily all due to a new entrant.
Absolutely. It was the sustained level, the secular trend that you see was because of the incumbents investing the money and outsourcing. That was not something that was bought by an outsider. It was the industry saying, how do we ensure that affordability is a critical component of the delivery? So outsourcing. Never heard. I mean, people thought we were out of our minds to outsource our core competency in network management. We outsourced that, tower management, and now that's a paradigm for the world.
A lot of innovations have happened
along
the way.
Absolutely. And this is what got passed on to the consumer.
Tell me, Rajan, how do you, assuming that Reliance Jio comes in with their big plans and they talk about building an intranet, etc., bundling various services together, and they're doing their own content, whereas existing players such as those that you represent, they'll be outsourcing content, right? So how would things change? How do you sort of imagine? I'm assuming that the TRAI will try to make an orderly transition, right? How do you imagine things will change from a customer consumer point of view, and especially from a rural telephony perspective also, because you have mentioned in your letter to the PM that an orderly shift is very important if the government's rural telephony project, which is part of Digital India, is to be realized. How do you see that happen?
So first of all, Venu, I'm glad you brought this up in terms of the content. So if you look at it, this is one of our concerns. When you talked about, discriminatory pricing, the decision made by Tribe, the free data decision, all of that was taking away our ability to provide affordable services to the end consumer. So they were saying, unless you have this type of a network, the specialized type of network, or unless, you have just the content providers talking to one another and giving you the freebie, you as an operator can't do it. So I think this really begins to start putting shackles on us in terms of delivering the continued content value. And I think we said, so obviously somebody who has content, like perhaps a new entrant, would perhaps have an advantage. But what we are seeing is that, look, the good thing is that most of the content in today's social media is created by the end user. All right, so the internet is going to be the big thing. Now, when I talk about rural penetration, think about this, right? When I, who have a customer or a customer base of 200 million, all right, goes to a new area, like a rural area, there's definitely going to be an imbalance, right? Because the bulk of the calls are going to come from this area because there's very few, probably 5, 10, 15,000 folks, to the 200. They want to get in touch with the rest of the world, all right? So there's going to be an imbalance in traffic, right? So therefore, what we are saying is that incumbent operators will use that differential, saying is that, for every one call, there's 10 calls going this way, right? So they are going to be able to, or the other way around, 10 calls this way, one call going this way, this type of an imbalance. We absorb that and continue to support the rural marketplace with that investment till they become mature and the balance becomes a lot more even. So this is where we have done this. And in spite of the fact that 5% of our revenue is taken to the USO fund, over the last 20 years, none of it really invested back, given to BSNL in a sense, right? But yet, when you look at the rural penetration, it's our incumbent operators that have taken it up to close to 50% today.
Yeah. Well, what is the USO fund today? It's about 35,000.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who's counting. Very interestingly, I had a conversation with a previous telecom secretary, and he said, Rajan, when I was at the Telecom Commission, I always asked myself the question, where's this $35 billion? It's gone into this general pool of money, right? Which is called.
But now we are told that the government is spending that amount to create this huge broadband outreach to 150,000 panchayats. Isn't that the plan?
And it's a good plan. I don't think that the vision is faulty in any way. And I think we in the operator side absolutely support Honorable Prime Minister's Digital India program. The question is the execution. Now, initially, what happened, it was given 100% to BSNL and to folks like RailTel and others. And the targets of meeting 250,000 gram panchayats the next number of years was falling way behind, which is why they've recalibrated and said, let's go to a more private-oriented structure that can get this thing going. So I think right vision, right objective, execution is where I think the challenge was.
And would it be fair to say that for this vision to be realized, you'll have to keep having funds flowing into the USO, Universal Service Obligation kitty? And for that, the larger telecom industry must remain in minimum good health. Isn't that a logical proposition?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So if for that reason alone, would it be fair to say that the telecom regulator should make these transitions, whether of technology or whether to new regimes, in a way that that the industry's health, overall industry's health, remains paramount, concern uppermost in the minds of policymakers and regulators?
Yeah, so we're not asking for any subsidies, by the way, Venu. You know, we're the one industry that contributes more to the government exchequer than any amount of money coming back to us in any sense of the word. So,
to give us an idea, I've heard a figure of the telecom industry pays the government through spectrum fee charges annually. How much?
you know, almost 3%, 3 to 4% of the total GDP, all right, of the government comes directly from the telecom industry. 6% if you take the cascading impact of us. So
in absolute terms, that works out roughly.
Yeah, now you can close to, you know, over, you know, 50, 60.
3% about $60 billion.
Yes, yeah. 60 billion, you know, 50, 60 billion US, right, in terms of the contribution. So it's not trivial. We're one of the largest contributors. So financial health is absolutely important. Now, again, I'm saying is that we're not asking for the government to subsidize us. We're asking for the government to tax us less. Okay. Today, 30% of every rupee that I get, all right, is given back to the government by way of taxes. 15% off the top in terms of license fee and spectrum usage charges, which are holdovers from the revenue share model. Okay. Today, I'm also paying upfront for my spectrum. In the old days, I got it bundled and it was pay as you go. Today, I'm getting hit with both. Pay upfront, large sums of money, so interest component goes way high, debt goes way high, all right? And the government gets the money, but nothing flows back to the industry. And this is where the crux in terms of saying financial health of the industry is important. You cannot continue to tax the industry in this manner and expect us to say, now go and, you know, roll it out to and connect the next 1 billion people who are not connected to the internet. Let's get to the rural areas. That's the challenge.
That's the challenge. And tell me, you've written, coming back to the controversy, you have written to the Prime Minister also, elaborating on your concerns about the way the regulator seems to be sort of shifting to new regimes and treating the incumbent operators and as opposed to new entrants, which is mainly Reliance Jio. Now, could you offer a solution which would be acceptable to, say, all parties without any bias this way or that way? I mean, what should the regulator do?
So clearly, we supported the regulator, Venu, when the regulator initially made the recommendation to go to a 1% flat SUC charge that addresses principally the issue of affordability, right? We said we support this, right? Now, what we're saying is that this tilt, there may be a perception, oh, the new guys are the, you know, guys who are bringing the innovation and bringing the affordability. And I'm saying is that, guys, look at the track record and see where it is. So let's not pick winners and choose losers in this paradigm. Create the that level playing field. So our point of view is saying is that when you start putting out papers like, as I said, that differential pricing and taking a decision, and then free data making a decision on this, which excludes the operators, and now introducing QoS norms that are way out of line in any international mandate and forum, by the way, now introducing, you know, the interconnect regime, which wants to drive it down to zero, in spite of the fact that most of the calls will be landing on our network. We'll bear the brunt of the cost of carrying these calls. Says,
so your revenues will sharply decline if it were to be implemented. Right?
Exactly, exactly. And that is the point. We are saying is that it's about 8 to 10,000 crore rupees worth of revenue. Now, please understand that, yes, there is you know, an impact on this. And we are saying is that necessary? Is that required? Please also understand that the government's revenue takes a hit. And you know what's our concern? They come back and raise the taxes because all of a sudden the revenue goes down. Look at what has happened in you know, the recent bill, the finance ministry. For the first time, right, the grant of spectrum was classified as a government service. So every time I get spectrum and I bid for spectrum, and you know the numbers that are being bandied around, you know, 25,000 crores, 50,000 crores, all right, again, service tax, 15% of that is going to be taxed. So I'm looking at this bill, and investors are scratching their head and saying is that you already pay 30% premium globally. Now you're going to pay another 15%. Yes, there's some offsets, but still, there's some real costs vis-a-vis the end consumer.
So the solution that you propose is that the TRAI should move on this in a more gradual fashion, or should not be jerky, or should not make take any drastic action in this regard?
So one of the things that the usual role of a regulator is to make sure that market forces are driving events and that there's no distortion of market principles, either predatory pricing wise or distortions in the market. That's the fundamental role of the regulator, right? Not to sort of pick and choose in what technology and who is a new entrant and who is an incumbent. So if they are looking and they're saying, oh, well, the tariff needs to be addressed, all of these matters need to be, doing it in a gradual way, because think about it, people having to bid for spectrum, for example, are making 20-year plans.
Yeah.
All right? So they have an expectation of what that revenue stream is to be. If you constantly go in and chip away at that revenue stream, then it becomes increasingly sort of difficult. Take this one example, right? Refinancing of debt. All right? I've got to refinance debt, to the thousands of billions, right? I go back into the market.
I think the industry has a
320,000 crore, right?
Debt.
Yeah. So I go back into the market. The market guy says, you know what? Last time you said there was a 14% revenue stream which you just lost. How are you going to make it up?
So basically, you're saying that market forces should be allowed to play out in an orderly way.
Correct.
No distortions.
Correct. Okay. Absolutely. That's what I mean. That is the fundamental role of the regulator.
Sure.
Is,
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajan Mathews, for talking to us.
Thank you.
That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.